Hi everyone, welcome. I'm down here in my worm array. I've got one of my worm bins out here in front of me, and if you look at the edge of the bin, there's a label on there. It gives the inception date of the bin, which was the 1st of June, and I've got a little spreadsheet that I took some notes off of that I thought I'd bring down here to help refresh my memory on what the deal is with this bin. So I've got that bin here listed. June 1. It's 102 days of age now, and it's received 11 feedings up until this time. There were some avocados in here. There was like a half of one, and there was a whole one that had not yet been broken. I've been cracking it every time I handle it. It's becoming so fragile. So in this bin, I was hoping to not only take care of feeding, but I thought I'd try to help that old feeding progress a little bit better now by maybe breaking up the avocado. I've also been very curious to see what's going on inside of that thing. I could peek through the holes, I could see worm activity, but I can never see really what's going on inside that thing. So I got the other bin over there on the shelf that we're going to feed after we take care of this one. It's a week younger. It started on the 8th of June, so it's only 95 days old. Now that they're both kind of in that almost 100-day-old age, even a week ago or maybe even 2 weeks ago, I had started into the whole process of trying to really limit slow composting items in both of these systems. So I've been holding off on using leaves because of all these stems that come in with each leaf. They're going to take a good amount of time, so I really wanted to cut off adding any new stuff like that into the bins. And I've been kind of feeding them with really easy, fast composting foods as well. Stuff like melon rinds, um, cucumber peelings, or pieces of lettuce, tomatoes, all kinds of really soft, easy to eat stuff that they can usually do away with within a week or so. So I've got a similar kind of feeding. I think it's cabbage. It's some stuff that my mom had bought over here. We'll get a closer look at it. It just came out of the freezer. I've also got some coffee. So I'm going to start in here, the older of the two bins, the 102-day bin. Just over here too, since it was 8 days ago, like I said, they got fast foods, no more fresh leaves. Yeah, so we pretty much covered all the bases. Besides avocados in here, there's also mango seeds in the other one. I don't know if I'll be able to break those up any, but we could try when we get there. Let's see, let's get this coverings off. Even though there's a good amount of fresh leaves still out on the top, which is how I like to sometimes leave my bins after I'm done working on them, by sprinkling some nice fresh leaves on them. These leaves have actually been in here for a couple weeks now. I just keep sort of trying to preserve them between check-ins. So in the beginning, I'll see if I could sort of set some of them off to the side, so at the end, when we want to cover up again, we might have a little supply of them. Let's do that again here, because I do like the look of the leaves, I must admit. And at some point, we'll have to just give that up, because these leaves also need some time to break down, be circulated down into the material below. So this could possibly be one of the last times we actually attempt to preserve this top covering layer of leaves. But we got a little stack reserve over here that we could use to rebuild with at the end. We fed down the middle. It's always so cool to me to see how certain things look after the worms have nibbled off everything they could. And they always leave behind this unusual little bit of structure of material on the leftovers that is just a little bit tougher, and they couldn't do away with it, so they took everything else off that they could. And at some point they'll be able to get back to this and polish it off. This is a sharp looking little thing, it's like seeing all the different veins on a leaf or something. I'm sure that's along those same lines. I guess we'll give ourselves a peek into the edges too, like we've been doing lately in all my bins. So after we finish applying some food down the middle, we'll maybe inspect the edges. I'm already bumping into various stuff here. Some sort of, this actually looks like a leaf. Yeah, what's left of a leaf here. I just broke its stem off. What else do we have here? Corn cob bits. What I've been doing lately is busting these things up, try to help them to the finish line too. Although the worms are definitely doing a good job of it. I don't know. I kind of go back and forth on that sometimes. Sometimes I get sick of seeing them and I just try to bust them up when I find them. Try to help drive them towards completion. Other times I maybe have a little more patience, a little bit more interest in seeing how they're coming along, or something interesting about whatever it was that I just found catches my attention, and And then I'll sometimes spare it from being crushed and give it another week to see how it progresses with only worms breaking it down instead of me busting it up. You can see I always try to keep a clean hand so I can manipulate the camera and do other things. At least keep one clean hand for emergencies or for just handling things that aren't meant to get all filthy. So if I was using two hands, it would be much easier to manipulate a mango seed like this. So doing it single-handed is a little bit tricky, but it also kind of holds me back from just trashing it, because with two hands I could probably tear this thing to little bits. But I'm sort of handicapping myself by forcing myself to do it with one hand, and you know, if it won't break apart yet with the strength of one hand, I'll just let it go a little bit longer on its own. But I was hoping to be able to maybe, you know, put a little dent into these mango seeds by maybe tearing them apart, opening up access to the inside of it for worm traffic, just, you know, generally exposing more of it by increasing the entire object's surface area so more and more of it can be approached by worms. So here inside the husk is what I think is the seed. Looks like it's been nibbled on a little bit, but I usually thought that that was what the worms were most interested in coming after. I usually like to put it right back where I found it, even if it actually accidentally pops out like that. So hopefully by opening it up like that, we're going to increase worm traffic into that thing. It'd be really nice to see these things break down. I don't know, they might have just end up coming out with the worms and getting relocated once it comes time to do that. But I think we're still a little way from that. We're still actively composting in here. It was a couple weeks ago that I started into the next phase of the life cycle in one of my other bins, where I stop feeding. And then I initiate what I call foraging. And that happened in the other bin after 15 feedings and maybe 130 something days. So, you know, just as a point of reference, this bin being 102 days old with now getting its 12th feeding today, we're, you know, maybe just a few weeks away from making the decision that it's time for this one to begin foraging too. And we'll start withholding feedings, and we'll start expecting that they spend more energy just plowing through the material, looking for all little bits of leftovers, like all the stuff that's scattered all throughout this stuff. And they break that stuff down rather than being fed fresh stuff. So the feeding area, it just has so much different stuff, all kinds of different things I've been pulling out, you know, old food bits, chunks of old bedding, and various other scraps. We could probably completely excavate it, but I'm not really after that right now. I'm just trying to open up enough space in it so that we could add today's feeding. Now, I've not been adding fresh leaves as the bedding for my feedings. I'm more leaning towards stuff that I assume is going to break down more quickly. That's the reason I've been using newspaper most lately. And I think that's what we're seeing here, is a lot of scraps of the newspaper that I've been using as bedding. You know, when I feed, I like to have at least a couple handfuls of fresh bedding to go with the food. It's my new kind of typical feeding anymore here in my wormery. So the foods that they're getting is your typical coffee, as well as some frozen stuff. I didn't really get a good chance to look this stuff through, so let's check it out now. It's what I don't know. To me, it looked like some sort of a cabbage or cauliflower leaves or something like that. I didn't really get a chance to ask what it was. I believe that cauliflower or cabbage or whatever it is stuff is down here at the bottom. There was also some other kind of like a leaf here. I don't know if it was just the leaves off of a bunch of carrots or radishes or something, or if it's just some sort of spice leaf that went bad over time. We'll give about half of this portion to these guys. Just give all the small particle stuff that's just hanging down at the bottom of the bag to them. That's the easy part. They already got a couple chunks of that stem and kind of the butt end. I'm always interested in seeing how these things break down, but they almost always get one, and it's almost always gone the next time I check, so it doesn't really take long for them to burn through something like this. I guess because it's frozen, once it thaws out, it probably gets all mushy already anyway, and it's just easy eating. There's really not that much here. It seems like we might have to come back into these bins to feed again at some point soon, because they're not getting too much today, it seems. I thought I had more, but evidently that's all I got. Well, they're going to get the coffee on top of that too, which is cool. A little extra chow here. And besides the newspaper, they're also going to be getting this piece of paper here too. A little extra bedding, along with all this recycled bedding, is going to go right back in there too. Should make this feeding area a nice tempting spot for the worms to hang out in. Before covering up, why don't we sprinkle a little grit, a little crushed eggshell is what I use for grit here. A little something to help the worms break their food down. And sometimes I just drape one of these coffee filters across the feeding. But I think I'm going to see what I could do about helping the stuff get broken down a little bit more quickly. Once again, just increasing its surface area by busting it up a little bit. So some of these old food bits, get them back down here where all the action's going to be, and get everything covered up. Well, things look pretty nice in here. I did see a couple worms crawling the walls, and I didn't really follow up on them. This little guy reminded me that I had noticed something over there, but I just kept going with what I was doing. I hope he didn't end up on the table, make his way out. Getting things covered up here, but not a lot of leafy stuff on the top. Lots of castings. This bin is definitely coming along good. You know what? Before we make the top surface of this look really pretty on this side, why don't we peek into the edges? I'm always curious to see how the edges furthest away from where the feedings are look, how they're coming along. I know that the way I feed always kind of opens up a new hole out of the existing hole, and the existing hole is always new stuff, and then what was pushed aside previously is just a little bit older as you work your way all the way out to the outside, which is where I've been steadily pushing stuff. Here out on the outer edge I found like another chunk of this corn cob. Somehow I'm just able to tell that that's what it is from touching it. And here too, I think we're just going to leave it be. The other day I was kind of on a kick to be breaking those things up. Maybe it was in a bin that's a little older than this one, so I really was more interested in seeing the bin wrap up already rather than observing food breakdown processes. So yeah, things look really good in here, gotta say. Good worm population. Anywhere you look, there's worms all over the place. So let's just set some of this stuff aside. We'll be able to use it to make the whole thing look nice and pretty and natural at the end. Looks like we've been able to preserve a good bit of it. But this could be the last time we get the pretty leafy toppings. Maybe it'll be time to start using that stuff as bedding too, and drop it in with the food, give it a chance to get broken down. This edge somehow, I don't know, just to the touch it feels a little bit drier. Although, you know, as I went right down to the bottom, I could feel the moisture difference as it got more damp down near the bottom. And naturally, there's a whole bunch of worms down there enjoying that moisture. No surprise with that. So I don't know why. I never used to do this. I never used to check the outer edges of my bins. I would mostly just feed and be done with it. But to me, somehow the outer edges are a pretty good indicator of how good your bin could look, right? Because everything down the middle, which is where I feed all the time, is always littered with all kinds of leftovers and food scraps and bedding bits. But out towards the edge, where nothing new is getting added really, mostly just old stuff getting pushed out there, kind of gives you a little sneak preview of how your worm bin could possibly look if you didn't keep fiddling with it, dropping in new stuff every week, and you know, littering up the almost finished castings with more stuff that just needs to be broken down. But I don't know. To me, that's what that seems like. I don't know if I'm diluting myself or misleading myself, but I do get that sense from looking at the outer edges of these bins that they're looking really good. They're coming along pretty good. Well, let's not speak too soon. Don't know how good things look in the other bin. I want to open that one up next. So let's put this one away. This is my feeding zone indicator. Pretty soon we'll stop feeding and then we won't need that anymore. And the rest of the coverings are just all paper-based stuff. Even though it's, you know, no plastic coverings, the moisture stays in this stuff so good, and I think that's just the nature of the castings themselves. So let's get the other bin out here and continue. So Now on this bin, the label's a little different. I actually have the label that I consider as sort of the relaunch of the bin, as well as the original start date of the bin. And the relaunch happened because the bin had started going anaerobic. I felt like I needed to scoop out a whole bunch of material that was really nasty, kind of give it a fresh start, and give the worms that were still surviving, because a lot were dying off, a new home. So it was also kind of meant to be a reminder to myself to not run bins the way I had been running, which resulted in that sort of an outcome. And I used to be real skimpy on the bedding. I allowed things to get way too damp with plastic coverings. Plastic coverings have their place, and I use them for sure. But once a bin has its own ability to hang on to its own moisture, like a bin rich in castings like these, it no longer really needs the help of the plastic. It does just fine hanging on to its own moisture. A lot of leaves on this one. This is a little bit younger. This is 1 week younger, so it's 95 days old. In this bin, there's already been 9 feedings, so this will be feeding number 10. It was feeding number 12 on the other bin, and this is feeding number 10. Here too, the leaves are holding up pretty good. There's a whole bunch of them. And we were doing the same thing here, not adding new ones, trying to see what we could do about preserving the existing ones. But when it comes to preserving stuff, I think I'm done trying to preserve some of these slow composting items. So here too, I'm going to see if I can kind of help with the mango seed. I don't know, every time I check one of these things out, I'm always curious to see what's inside. And with 2 hands it would be so much easier. But I can see a couple worms hanging out and they're enjoying it. I don't know what's happening down in here. Hopefully more activity. And with that avocado there, that whole avocado that's probably been in this bin for maybe 6 weeks now or so. It's just total guess. I don't really remember when it was. If somebody knows how long it's been in there, please correct me. But yeah, that thing, it's just holding up really good. I had punched a hole in the side of it with my knife just to make sure that the worms can get into it and not waste a whole bunch of time with just trying to see how long it takes for the worms to actually breach the shell of the avocado. So I gave access that way, but other than that, I didn't compromise the, the shape of it or anything, or at least not intentionally. I have compromised the shape of it because a couple times I'm just holding the thing and it starts cracking in your hands and making all these weird noises. I'm dying to see what's going on in that thing, and I told myself last week in the video that I was going to crack that thing open. Perhaps not even out of interest. I might have said that last time, out of more of an interest in seeing the thing break down eventually instead of it just being there all the time. But it's probably a fair, honest combination of both. So we're, I don't know, we didn't have that much food, so we probably don't need that big of a hole here to place the new food into. Let's go all the way to the bottom. I'm just curious to see how things look at the very bottom sometimes. All these little white specks, I always have to assume that they're probably leftovers of the grit that I use. Little pulverized eggshell bits everywhere. My hope is that they're not all mites. Sometimes it's hard to tell. If there's something covered in little white specks, sometimes you wonder, is it a whole bunch of mites or is it just eggshell sticking to it? Sometimes I'll run a little time lapse here and there to reveal if any of the white little specks are moving. But I don't think we're going to bother with that here today. Alright, we made a pretty good dent in the side of this, in this feeding area to place some new chow into. Not going to go too crazy at this point. We're going to just leave it to what the food supply was. Let's just dump out what remains in this bag. Hopefully we got it all. And it's more of the same. It's just some of these leaves, whatever they were, I don't even know. And more butt end of some sort of a stem of something. It looks kind of like cauliflower, if I had to guess. And some of the leaves, some of the thick leaf stems and stuff like that. So should be a pretty good little feeding for these guys. And I guess the operative word there is little. It's not a very impressive big feeding. I might have to be back in this bin, another week or so to see how these feedings are coming along. But I'm really down to the point where what do I do? What do I do with this thing? Do I crack it open? Do we let it go a little bit longer? I don't know. It seems like a shame to crack it since it is still holding up so good. I don't know. Maybe we'll leave it. Let's do the same here. Just gonna hack up this coffee filter into smaller pieces so that maybe it's easier for the worms to treat it as a food source. Oh, I'm getting coffee on my clean hand. Not a big deal. That's pretty good feeding. And just see if I could peek into some of the holes. I mean, I could definitely see worm activity down inside that hole. It's just tough to see inside that hole as well. Here too. I don't know if I'm looking at the same hole now repeatedly. So it does seem like there's a good amount of worms in there. I just wonder how the pit's doing. You know, there's a hard pit inside of every avocado. And I'm really curious, I guess mostly curious about how the pit's doing in there. I wonder if they're actually nibbling on it. Is it breaking down? Is it still hard as a marble, or is it starting to, you know, get composted? So I guess we've decided we're leaving the avocado as is for a little while longer. I don't know, is anybody else out there curious about what the inside of it looks like? I know I am. Alright, my other hand is a little bit dirtier anyway. we'll just roll with it. It's a little bit more fun actually when you use both hands. As long as I don't go overboard, I've still got a little clean pinky. I can operate the camera without getting things too messy. I just want to do the same here, is check out the outer edges of the bin. There's little chunks of cardboard like this, you know. Maybe if we were to check the outer edges earlier, we could pull stuff like that into where the feeding is, where the action is. Perhaps it would help break them down a little bit more quickly. This is what I was looking for before. That other chunk of avocado peel. Maybe this piece will actually help it along a little bit and break it apart, since it's already so far along anyway. Why not, right? I don't know. Only a week younger, but it somehow just feels so much further behind, you know. I'm finding big chunks of old bedding. Leaves are holding up much better, holding out longer. And I guess not only is it younger, but I also believe that the population in here is smaller. So all stuff kind of stacked against the bin, you know, if it were a race. But it's not a race, so it doesn't matter. The bin gets ready when it gets ready. And this one might just take a little bit longer than the other one, based on its population size and stuff, but it'll get there. I'm confident of it. So, things look pretty good in here. Try to remember, did I forget anything? I don't think so. I think I got it all. So let's get the system covered up and put away. Not much more to do here other than that. Maybe clean up a few things, but I'm not going to keep you around for that because that's boring. Before I go though, let me really quickly say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please remember to leave me a thumbs up. Show that you liked the video. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. Alright everyone, have a great day. Bye now.